So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our History at Home presentation on the 50th anniversary of the Roger Blough fire. And today is May 18th of the year 2021. My name is Bethany Tober, and I am the Special Projects Coordinator. And if you're joining us live, then you know that this program is being offered for free for you all today. And this program has generated a lot of interest, so we're going to record this and save it for future viewers. We began offering History at Home presentations over Zoom last year at the start of COVID, and this is our last History at Home presentation on our calendar for the spring and summer. As we transition to fully reopening, we are currently evaluating and planning our programming lineup for the fall of this year. So the best way to stay informed about our plans is to sign up for our e-news, and you can do that by emailing info@lorainhistory.org. And so right now on the calendar for the summer is our Discover Lorain Kids Summer Camp in June for grades 1 through 5. We have our golf outing coming up, Tee Up for History, scheduled Saturday, July 17th. And our ice cream social that we have every year is scheduled for Sunday, August 8th. And this will include a birthday party for the Lorain Historical Society as we turned 40 years old this year. And during the program tonight, if you experience any technical difficulties with Zoom, please use the chat feature and I will do my best to help you. And also in the chat, feel free at any time to post questions for our speakers. I will be monitoring the chat as we go and we'll save all questions for the end. And our speakers for tonight's presentation are retired firefighter Andy Drwal and the Lorain Historical Society's curator, Caitlin Donaldson. Andy retired from the Lorain Fire Department in 2001 after 30 years of service. He also served as the Ohio Association of Professional Firefighter District Vice President from 1984 to 2004. And he was also the president of his local association, 267, for 20 years. So without further ado, I will turn things over to Andy and Caitlin.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you, Andy, for being here.
You're welcome.
So for tonight's program, let's see if my PowerPoint slide will advance. There we go. We're going to kind of do it in two parts. I'm going to go first, and then we'll transition into Andy's part. So I'm going to give an introduction to the program. I have some background information on Lorain shipbuilding history leading up to the significance of the Roger Blough being built. And then I'll review some important timeline information that occurred on the day of the fire, June 24th, 1971. I'll wrap up with an update on the Roger Blough today, and then we will transition to Andy and have a discussion, sort of interview, maybe with where he shares his experiences the day of the fire. Okay. So the program was put together to commemorate a tragic incident in Lorain 50 years ago that many still remember to this day and may have at least heard stories of from friends and families. Since 50 years have passed, we thought now would be a good time to review what happened, learn about the challenges the firefighters faced, and finally commemorate the 4 men who lost their lives. They were identified as John D. Alexander, 28, of Lorain, Leonard C. Moore, 34, of Elyria, George E. Adams, 44, of Lorain, and Clyde R. Burdew, 60, of Vermilion. So I'm sure some of our listeners may have known these men or are related to them, and we are keeping you in our thoughts tonight as we go through this program. So shipbuilding was one of Lorain's first industries, dating back to the early 1800s when wooden ships were built by different families along the Black River. In 1897, the Cleveland Shipbuilding Company, which became American Shipbuilding, moved to the east bank of the Black River, and the first steel ships were launched in Lorain in 1898. Over the years, these dry docks built 295 boats, consisting of passenger ships, tankers, tugs, and ferries. During World War II, the shipyard contributed to the Navy fleet with minesweepers, ore boats, and cruisers. Beginning in the 1960s, the trend of lengthening existing ships took over the industry. When the Soo locks expanded to over 1,000 feet, Lorain's dry docks rose to the challenge of building the longest freighters on the Great Lakes. The first freighter to be extended was the Roger Blough, but many followed. And there's a photo of the Roger Blough there on the right. So the significance of the Roger Blough. In 1967, U.S. Steel contracted for the largest ship to ever be built completely on the Great Lakes at the time. The ship was dubbed the Roger Blough after the former board chairman of U.S. Steel. It is 858 feet long and able to carry 45,000 tons of taconite ore and other pellets between its route to Gary or South Chicago area and Lake Superior. It has a 21-foot propeller driving the ship along at 17 miles per hour, all in totaling an expected 2 million tons of cargo shipped annually. And it held its record length title until 1979. Construction began on the ship while docked at the Black River in Lorain. This is a quote here. The total cost of construction was approximately 20 million. It was built in 2 sections. The keel of the 437-foot long bow section was laid September 3rd, 1968, and was float launched in December 1968. A new 125-foot wide dry dock had been constructed where the keel of the 421-foot long stern section was laid December 1969. The bow section was floated into the new dry docks in July of 1970 and was joined to the stern section. The photo on the left was taken in July 1969 when they were building this dry dock, and the photo on the right shows the process of the ship being built in 2 parts. The first part was built in a dry dock and then was floated into this wet dock. It was shortly after its commission and when it was nearly ready to begin its career when the tragedy struck. So on the morning of June 24th, 1971, headed by Captain J. Neil Rolfson Jr. and his 28-man crew, they were preparing for the Blough's dock and sea trials, which were roughly a week away. The ship had taken up 30,000 gallons of diesel fuel to prepare for its journey. In the lower engine room, as the last of the necessary fuel was being pumped into the ship, a gasket let go of a fuel line accidentally. Oil then dripped onto a light bulb, which exploded, triggering a blaze that soon spread throughout the engine rooms and various compartments, filling the entire space with lung-choking smoke. Soon, over 90 firemen from Lorain, Elyria, Sheffield, Avon Lake, Cleveland, Fairview Park, and Shaker Heights landed on the scene to help fight the blaze and help the crew escape from the burning ship. In total, due to its undergoing construction, it is believed roughly 300 men were working on the ship at the time the fire broke out, and about 25 in the immediate area. Though difficult, most men were able to escape the engine room and make it to the top deck, where they began assisting the firefighters to quell the flames. The men in the line of danger escaped in any way possible, moving towards stairwells, trying any door in sight, or as one man remembers, simply being yanked out amongst the panic. However, when the majority of the crew had made it to the deck and were safe from the flames, they realized there were 4 men unaccounted for. Through multiple explosions and temperatures up to 25,000 degrees Fahrenheit in some areas, the eclectic crew of firemen fought tirelessly to rescue the 4 men trapped several decks below the wheel room in an area called the inner bottoms of the Roger Blough. Sadly, the intense heat kept the crew from getting to the men, and they most likely died from asphyxiation from the smoke. And additionally, 18 men were admitted to St. Joseph's Hospital in Lorain due to smoke inhalation. So it's clear to see that fighting this fire was no easy task. Before I turn the story of that part of the program over to Andy, I'm going to jump ahead in the narrative and briefly finish my part of the program. So the repairs to the Blough after the fire was extinguished, the repairs to the Blough took about a year and cost $10 million. It completed a successful first launch on June 12th, 1972, and went on to have a successful career on the Great Lakes. The Roger Blough is under the ownership of the Great Lakes Fleet, and up until this year commonly carries limestone and other stones from various ports. However, the Roger Blough was recently in the news for another fire incident in February of this year. While docked at the winter in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, a fire broke out early in the morning. No one was injured, but news reports noted the firefighters had trouble locating the source of the fire. I couldn't find a report that listed the cause of the fire yet, but they estimated that they used 1 million gallons of water to extinguish it, and that damages are around $20 million. So I am checking the news reports occasionally for updates, but I don't have anything further to add to what's going on with the Roger Blough tonight. But hopefully more will come out as they finish their investigations. Okay, so now we're gonna turn things over to Andy, and he will share some of the story. Andy, if you wouldn't mind starting out telling us where you're from and how you got into the firefighting business.
Okay, well, first I'd like to thank you, Caitlin, for the invite, and it's interesting to hear what took place, that some of the things that I didn't know even being there. Yeah, as Caitlin said, I'm a lifelong resident of Lorain. I grew up on 18th and Hamilton, half a block from a fire station. So I hung out at the fire station practically all my younger days, knew all the firefighters, before I got on the fire department. In between that, I enlisted in the Navy after I wrecked my dad's car. I had to get out of town. So I enlisted in the Navy. And during my time in the Navy, I was attached to the USS Forrestal. And ironically, the Forrestal caught fire. And we were in Vietnam. We were in the Gulf of Tonkin, and John McCain, the senator, was a pilot on that ship, and he was kind of being blamed for the incident on that ship. We had a fire for 24 hours and ended up back in Subic Bay, and came home, worked at the steel plant for a year, and then got on the fire department in January of 1970. And then when I got on the fire department, I said, well, at least I'll never have to fight another ship fire again. Well, that's where the term comes, never say never, because we all know on June 24th, 1971, I was at another ship fire. That particular day, I was stationed at #1 station on 4th Street, the main station. I remember the call coming in originally, and normally they send, on a call like that, they'll send the east side pumper, and I think at that time #2s probably went from the other side of town. And when they got there, naturally it was an all-out, send everybody, send all equipment, and that's when we at Pumper 1 started our deal. At that particular time, all the Scott air packs, the breathing apparatus that we used, were filled at #1 station. So the captain said, get all the bottles you can, put them on the truck, and off we went to the fire. The thing I remember first when I got to the scene of the fire, was naturally we knew we had people trapped, and the worst thing a firefighter wants to hear is that. We go into a different mode then. But it was so big of a fire, and so initially we didn't know how to fight it. Because I remember the first thing that I did was, I had my gear on, and the lieutenant and somebody was yelling, come on, come on, come on. And they put us on a crane lifted cage and brought us up to the top of the ship, the forward part of the ship. And once they let us out of that cage, they're somebody was yelling at the aft end of the ship, come on, come on, come on. And we all had to run the full length of that ship to get to where they were yelling, come on, come on, come on. And they put us in another cage and brought us back down to where we were. So that's how confusing it started. I mean, we went from, going up to the top of the ship and getting brought back down. Through the time that we were there, naturally, our first response was trying to get into the ship. Almost impossible with the heat, like you said, was intense, and the smoke was more intense. You can see some of the pictures that the firefighters that were, trying to get into the access of the by the ladder and couldn't make it, overcome by smoke, heat, and other injuries, throughout the day. A lot of firefighters, I know were injured, sprains here and there, burned a little bit here and there. But ironically, eventually, through the day, we got help from other fire departments. I also remember at one point, the discovery of we have to foam, we have to just fill the ship with foam.
So how often do you use foam as a firefighter?
During my career, probably I can only remember 2 or 3 other times that we had to use foam. I can't remember for what, but I know we did, but not the amount of foam that they actually had to fly in foam from Michigan to supply our foam machine that was trying to put the fire out. But prior to that, we were trying to gain entry. I recall we could have lost a number of firefighters that were inside the ship and feeling their way around. And after the fire was out, we saw where they were. They were at a point where they could have fell into the engine room at a drop-off point, and fortunately, we didn't lose any firefighters.
Tell us what was the inside of the ship like? What's it like being on a ship, for those who haven't been? But
it's hard to describe because it's so unfamiliar. I mean, you don't know where you're going. You don't know, basically where to go. And the one thing I do also recall is my lieutenant, Pat Costello, probably one of the best lieutenants I worked with. We got somebody to cut a hole at the base of the ship, and like right where the land met the ship. One of the guys that worked there had a torch, and we cut an entrance through the bottom of the ship. We were able to gain access through that entrance a lot easier because smoke rises, and we got in to where we could actually see what we were doing and help put the fire out. I wasn't part of the team that found the guys that perished in the fire, but it just it was an all-day affair. 22 hours I was there, and probably one of the worst fires I had to fight in my career.
Yeah. What's it like? What goes through your head when you realize how difficult that fire is going to be as a firefighter? How do you push through a whole day of that?
In my opinion, firefighters are special people. It's like you do things that normal people don't do, you know what I mean? And you do it without thinking about it. It's just, if somebody told me today to get up on that ladder, like the 100-foot aerial that I was up with no problem when I was a firefighter during a fire, I would never do it. I'm scared to death of it. But when you're in that, the adrenaline and your training and everything that you bring with you to as a package to a fire, it just takes over. You become a different type of individual, I guess. No other way to say it.
What besides your personal experience witnessing a fire on a ship before this incident, what training in 1971 did firefighters have for a blaze like this?
And in 1971 was totally different now than it was then. When I got on the fire department, your training was basically on the job training. We didn't go to school, like these guys go to school. We didn't have the training. Of course, as long, as my career went on, we got training. We came to that point of, but at that point, training to fight a ship fire was not on the agenda. I mean, we never thought we'd have, I never thought we'd have to fight another ship fire, but I'm sure today they have some sort of at least training. You need so many things when you're at a fire like that. You need to have somebody, first of all, from the ship that, could lay out the blueprints of it and give you an idea of where everything's at, how to get in, what to do. And I'm sure they're doing that today, especially after that experience. It was just a long day, a big major fire. And again, there was quite a few guys there. So a big operation like that today is a lot different. There's different things that were set up, like incident command, that somebody is running the whole show from one place instead of everybody telling you, like they said, here, come down here and put me back down on the ground, But
where were you getting like the orders, like in all that chaos?
Well,
how was
each company, like my company was, company engine number 1, and there's a captain on that particular unit. And if he passes on the command to a higher command, it trickles down kind of, you end up, I work with lieutenant men, and so just following the lead of the officers, basically, as I was a young firefighter. I'd only been on the fire department a little over a year. And, so I was pretty much listening to anybody that told me anything. So, but it was a tragedy. The 4 gentlemen that were caught down there, there's just no explanation of how you feel of trying to get to the help them. But the fire overall was mainly extinguished at the foam. Water, and I could use some firefighter language here, but I won't do that. But it was just a long day. A long day. And aside from the fact that, we had a ship fire going and 5 departments or more at the scene, we still had to protect the citizens, the city. And we had actually 2 house fires that day. So there were men, firefighters that came in from other jurisdictions that were stationed in our stations to protect the citizens while we were there fighting this fire.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
But, it just, 50 years is a long time to try to remember all the little incidents, but it was a long, hard day for everybody.
Do you remember, you mentioned one close call with some of your firefighters where they almost fell.
Yeah.
Do you recall any other close calls that others went through?
Well, like I said, the pictures you saw there, I can tell you who those guys were, and I remember them. I see them, like through the picture. I was live in my memory. Any one of them could have been tragic. They were overcome by smoke. The lieutenant, or I don't know if he was a lieutenant at the time, Harry Stewart, that they were carrying down, he was just limp, just almost lifeless. And and again, I don't know the particulars of if anybody. I know there were small sprains and things of that nature, but nothing really other than, the guys that got overcome by smoke and stuff.
Let's see, when at the end of the day, on that day, what was going through your mind when you went home?
I was tired. I was tired, and I was overwhelmed that of what just took place. I mean, I didn't expect anything like that ever again to happen. But it just I just wanted to I can't recall exactly what I did, but because I didn't get home till the next morning, and just wanted to go to bed probably and sleep it off or whatever.
Yeah. When you think back to that event, 50 years later, what goes through your head?
The same thing I kind of mentioned to you about how tragic it was for and I've seen so much in my 30 years in respect to life and death and things that people don't see all the time, hands-on type things, and I see it all the time. It was the greatest job in the world, until you had to face. And firefighters see things from a different angle, I think, than like I said, most people. But you have to. I don't want to say be a cold person, but you have to have somebody has to be in charge. Somebody has to take control of the situation, and when it's over, you walk away and you wait for the next situation. So, and this has nothing to do with the Roger Blough fire, but I delivered 8 babies too. So you have to be prepared for anything, It's just an experience that, I can't hardly explain to you because you weren't there.
Yeah. Well, we've reached the end of my questions, but is there anything else that you want to say before?
Other than, I really think that everybody that was there, including the ship workers themselves, were at some point, coordinated and worked their butts off to try to do whatever they could to help, the people that were trapped. And I'll never forget that. That's all I really.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, not a problem.
And reliving it and just sharing it with us.
Yeah. I'll always be a firefighter.
Thank you. Well, there's a couple more pictures. I'm just gonna pause through these real fast. Before we take questions, I do want to just do a couple plugs at the Historical Society. We do have 2 artifacts from the Roger Blough. One is a fire axe that was taken off the ship by a ship worker, and the porthole here was salvaged from the debris pile while it was under reconstruction. So these are 2 new donations that we have on display. So if you would like to visit the Historical Society, you can see them. Here are my sources. But Bethany, maybe if you could, do we have any questions or feedback from the group?
Yes. So I just wanted to say thank you so much again, Andy, not only for sharing your story with us today, but also your work fighting fires. I mean, thank you so much for protecting the citizens of Lorain and surrounding communities. So we do have a question from the chat from David Dwayne. He asks, what was your job on the Forrestal?
Oh, I worked on the flight deck. I was in a squadron, VAW 123, and I was a aviation electrician that pretty much pulled bad black boxes out of the aircraft and put new ones in. But I was on my way up to the flight deck when a 1,000-pound bomb went off, and we were in the Gulf of Tonkin, Vietnam, and ready to launch an attack. My first thought was, we're being attacked. That was my first thought. Finally, the captain came over and did the I forget what they called it back then. Blew the whistle and said, all hands on deck. And I just made it up to the flight deck, fought the fire just like my other, shipmates did. 134 sailors were killed that day on that ship. Most of them was working the night shift and sleeping below decks. And as the bombs went off, I think there were 5,000 or 6,000-pound bombs that went off, just ripped 6-inch steel deck, open it like a can opener, and that's where most of the sailors that were on board got killed. Yeah, my job was working on the aircraft on the flight deck.
Thank you. I do have a question for you. So you talked about when you were at the Roger Blough fire and they were bringing people, up in cages to the top of the ship and then back down again. So my question is, has firefighting on large freighters like this changed since 1971?
I'm sure, I'm sure they have. I couldn't tell you exactly, what has changed, but Lorain naturally not having a shipbuilding company around anymore, I'm sure one of the bigger fire departments, that has these carriers coming in. Well, I mean, they have carriers coming in and out of Lorain, so it could still happen here. But I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about that. But what I am sure about is that I'm sure that the techniques and the training since that time is well in advance of what it was then. I'm sure about that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. We have a request from Gail McMillan. She would like to see some of the photos or slides from the end of the presentation again. I think.
Not sure which ones she'd like to see, but
I think these are good. I think from here, maybe. We also have another question from David Dwayne. Who were the people you worked with at Station 1?
Oh, well, the driver of the pumper was George Evanoff, and my captain was Captain Don Stahl. So there was 3 of us on the truck at that time.
Oh, David Dwayne also said that all the ships now have CO2 systems in the engine room. So he had that comment to add. Okay, well, I'm looking for other questions. If you have any other questions, send them my way.
yeah, otherwise I'll say one more time, thank you, Andy, for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
Thank you everyone who joined us here live. We are recording this, so we hope to put it on YouTube, so you can share it, or if your friends missed it, it'll be accessible. And we'll just kind of hang out here for a couple minutes and see if any more questions come in. But Thank you, everyone who joined us, and I hope you all have a good night.
This is awesome. I have a comment here from Tom Konchek. He's a lifelong East Side resident, and 2 of the photos in the webinar were taken by himself at the age of 9 years old. His grandma had lived across from the shipyards. So he says thanks.
Nice job.
Wow.
That's awesome. And we also have Tom Tonich here. He says, hi, my dad, my hero, saved many lives that day, along with Stan Smeagol. His pic was posted.
Tom and I work together as well. I just talked to Stan Schmiegel the other night, so I know Tom.
Awesome.
I know Tom.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Oh, I can't tell who this is from, but someone said, please share the letter to Steinbrenner before you sign off.
Oh, yep.
Ah, thank you.
How often are you asked about the Roger Blough?
I mean, if you talk to me, anybody that talks to me is going to hear the whole spiel. So it just depends. I mean, I like talking about my career and my experiences and my travels. I traveled pretty much around the whole world in the Navy. I mean, even after the ship fire I was on, the forestall got repaired, and we went on a med cruise, they call it. I went to France, Italy, Spain, Greece, Malta, the whole 9 yards. So I'll tell you anything you want to know about my career. I enjoyed it. And they always say this, if you have or find a job you love, it's not like working, and that's what firefighting is. We were a family. You got to keep that in mind. When you go to work 24 hours, you can't, if your wife gets mad at you, you can maybe walk outside and maybe go to the bar or something, but when they got mad at us at the fire, we had to make up. We had to be together for 24 hours. So, that was a family away from home. So the job itself is a great job. And believe me, all the firefighters, even to this day, anywhere you'll find, I could walk in any fire station anywhere in the United States and they take me in. They'd welcome me. They'd welcome you too, but I mean, the brotherhood is just a whole different type of, relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we had a female firefighter in Lorain, Tammy Strawn. I think she's working in Avon Lake Fire Department right now. And so there's female firefighters out there that are, doing the same thing in this day and age. That, the guys, when I got on, it was all men, but transition into, anybody can work there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Bethany, maybe we will call it a night.
Okay.
If you have questions, feel free to, anything you think of later, you can email me, kdonaldson@lorainhistory.org, and then I can follow up with Andy,
Sure.
get you an answer if we can. But thank you all. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great night.